It said unable to, and now. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa afdalus salati wa atammu taslimi ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Allahumma akhrijna min dhulumatil wahm wa akrimna bi nuril fahm وافتح علينا بمعرفة العلم وحسن أخلاقنا بالحلم وجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Dear brothers and sisters, I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that all of you are doing well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep you and your loved ones under His protective care. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us relief from every hardship and every difficulty. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take away our worries and our anxieties, our weaknesses and our shortcomings. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala endow us with every beautiful quality that He loves and that brings us closer to Him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala endow us with health, with well-being, with prosperity, and most importantly, guidance upon the truth until we ultimately meet Him subhanahu wa ta'ala and enter into His gardens of paradise. Ameen, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Inshallah, with another name tonight in the series of the most perfect names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the name for today is al-Mutakabbir, which is generally translated as the proud. This name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or rather this word in the Arabic language, al-Mutakabbir, means the one who regards everything as insignificant and small compared to himself, who sees greatness and majesty only in regard to himself and looks upon others as kings look upon their subjects and their servants. And unlike the other attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a name that is exclusively His. In other words, we don't have the right to call ourselves al-Mutakabbir, nor is it expected from us to cultivate the meaning of al-Mutakabbir in our own personalities. Because al-Mutakabbir, this is a majestic name of the lordship, the rububiyyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only He deserves to be called al-Mutakabbir. Only He deserves to act as the proud, the al-Mutakabbir. As for us, as ibad, as servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are expected to behave the opposite of that. We are expected to behave with humility before Allah and before the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has indicated this in many different texts. So for example, in one text he said sallallahu alaihi wasallam that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala glorifies Himself and says, I am al-Jabbar, I am al-Mutakabbir, I am al-Malik, I am al-Muta'al, these majestic names of Allah. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam continued speaking like this until the pulpit, the mimbar on which he was, began to shake, and the companions were getting afraid that he might fall from it. In another hadith, which is a hadith Qudsi, related by Abu Dawood in his Sunan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Kibriya, or pride, is my upper garment, and glory is my lower garment. Whoever competes with me in either of these two, I will cast him into the fire of hell. So glory and pride, these are exclusively reserved for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we act with these qualities, Allah considers us to be competing with Him. So when I look down upon anyone in my family, in my community, in the world, when I look down upon them and consider myself to be better than them, then I am acting in a way that is considered to be competing with the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why arrogance, my brothers and sisters, is one of the most major sins of the heart. It is that sin that led shaitan astray. It is that sin that led Iblis to his doom, because he said, Ana khayrun minh, talking about Adam, that I am better than him. I am better than him. And this is also the disease or the sin of the heart that led the son of Adam alayhi salam to kill his brother. We all know the story of Habil and Qabil, how one brother killed his brother because he was jealous. But he was jealous of him because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had accepted the offering of that brother and not accepted his offering, whereas he considered himself to be worthier than his brother. So out of arrogance, he became jealous of his brother. And then jealousy led him to murder his own brother. So this disease of the qalb, of the heart, arrogance, is a root problem that leads to many other diseases as well. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam also said in a hadith related by Imam al-Tirmidhi that the jabbarun and the mutakabbirun among people will be raised on the day of judgment like tiny particles, and people will trample them with their feet. So in this world, when we behave arrogantly with pride and arrogance and boastfulness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish us on the day of judgment by making us experience the opposite of that, by being turned into tiny particles. And then those very people that we considered ourselves to be greater than and better than will trample us with their feet. So the way that we connect with this name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is different from the way that we connect with the other names of Allah. In the past 10 episodes, I've talked about how we need to develop a connection with the names of Allah and how we cultivate these attributes in our own personalities. When it comes to this name, the way that we connect with this name is by humbling ourselves before the greatness of Allah and by submitting to the divine decree. When something befalls us, we submit to it. By doing that, we are admitting and acknowledging the greatness of Allah over us and our own smallness, insignificance, and lowliness before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's how we connect with this name in our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the way that we cultivate this attribute in our lives, in our personalities, again, is by cultivating the opposite quality, because this quality is the quality of the Rabb, the Lord. So we cultivate the opposite quality, which is the quality of the Abd, the servant, the slave in ourselves, which again is the quality of humbleness and humility. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that whoever humbles himself for Allah, Allah elevates his rank until he reaches the highest of the high. And whoever glorifies himself before Allah, Allah lowers his rank until he reaches the lowest of the low. What this means is that when I humble myself before Allah, what does that mean? That means that when I, for example, see something that needs to be done, and it is something that Allah loves, and it is something that benefits humanity, but it is something that is considered beneath me because of my status in society. When I humble myself and do that thing because Allah loves it, because it benefits His creation, even though it is considered beneath my status in society, when I lower myself and do that, that elevates me in the sight of Allah Azza wa Jal. And literally, I will be elevated on the day of judgment in front of all of creation. So this is how I cultivate this attribute of Allah. The more I remember that Allah is al-Mutakabbir, then I will remember that I ought not to act like a mutakabbir. I ought to act as a lowly servant, because only He and He alone is al-Mutakabbir. He alone deserves to deal with the creation in that way. As for me, I am a lowly, humble servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all from the disease of arrogance and pride and boastfulness and looking down upon others. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us overcome the urges of our inner self that urge us to act haughtily and with pride in front of our family members and community members and co-workers and human beings. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never let us be conflated to the extent that we act like that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us humble. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the gift of humility inwardly and outwardly. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevate our ranks in His sight and in the sight of His righteous servants with true heights in this life and in the hereafter. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those who listen to the words of admonition and follow the best of them. وصل اللهم وسلم وبارك على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.